Hi, SEEDS people. So today we're going to be talking to Miss Tiffany Carey. So hi, Tiffany. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Valeria. How are you? Good morning,
Very
no,
good.
afternoon and Eastern time.
So today, I just wanted to get to know you a little bit. So you're a SEEDS alumni. How did you get involved with SEEDS?
So I think I circa back to 2011, and I had my first ESA meeting, so Ecological Society of America. And from that meeting, I think I was motivated by a mentor to just kind of come to the meetings, this very big ecological conference, given the research I was doing. And I was told about the SEEDS program from there. And I think by 2012, I had already applied for the first year of the fellowship program, which I think started in 2012, I think so. But that's how I got involved. And since then have always been involved, even in this capacity, but participated for about most of my undergraduate career.
Oh, great. So how do you think your involvement with SEEDS helped you develop into the person you are today and in your career?
Yeah, good question. I mean, really making ecology and science real in the way of relationships, in the way of development with not only career, but even of self. I think SEEDS does a great job of embodying that science and this journey of exploration and even solving world's problems is not just about yourself and what you produce, but the community that you're involved in. So I always felt that the SEEDS chapters, the SEEDS mission was not just around the science, but that there were the relationships, the community of the people you are involved with during your time, but also the alumni
Yeah.
and reaching back has been a part of the just the fabric of what it is. So that falling in love with ecology, but falling in love with just the SEEDS family was core to the mission. But also just building a fundamental network of peers and even mentors. So the mentor mentee program and allowing undergraduates to feel confident to ask questions of people who are maybe much older or just maybe even have seniority in their careers to gain that wisdom and that guidance. And also just involvement with a large ecological organization and conference, which is usually not even happening at undergraduate level. People wait way longer to be a part of conferences, but to have that initial just spark very early on was very special and also a great exposure opportunity for people to, for me, as well as many other students to feel confident in spaces of sharing science, sharing knowledge, and sharing passion. And then I would just say also just leveraging opportunities. So being able to network, being able to feel confident in not just your skills, but to gain just insight for how to take your science in different spaces, right? Not just academia, but all different facets of what society has to offer. So all of those pinpoints, I think, again, with the bedrock of relationships and community, and making that a part of exploration and continued learning.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm.
So could you tell us a little bit about what you're doing now?
Yeah, so I am in Detroit, Michigan. It is a snowy Tuesday afternoon. And I am currently working at the National Wildlife Federation, and I am serving as a senior education engagement coordinator. I've been with the National Wildlife Federation going about 3 years, and my work is focused primarily on creating and restoring and preserving wildlife habitats across the region. And what that means is I actually lead a program specifically called Sacred Grounds, which actually mobilizes, supports, and leverages houses of worship and faith communities across the region to create their wildlife habitat, knowing that houses of worship are usually hubs in the community for people's spiritual healing, togetherness, even just right now in COVID, being able to have a place for just solace. And knowing that those are places where these types of demonstrations of wildlife and native plants and just nature and reconnecting in nature can happen. So I lead that program, provide funding, provide resources for those communities to feel empowered to make those changes on their campus. But more so, obviously, taking those practices outward. So even if you do not belong to a faith community, you are walking by a garden, seeing a pollinator, and wanting to do that at your own home. So that's kind of the interconnectedness in the network of the work that I do within the region, but also support a lot of youth programming, just anything around green networks, green city planning, incorporating more parks, more natural green spaces across different cities in our region. So that's what I'm doing now. Stay tuned for more development of career, but I work even in ESA, in SEEDS, And along my journey before NWF has always been around community-based programming and connecting science to communication, and also making transformative change and making sure that people feel empowered to make those changes for themselves. So making science real for the average person in their average neighborhood, in their backyard, to create, for instance, a wildlife habitat in their farm. So that's kind of the work that I do now.
That's such important work. I mean, just looking back into my childhood and where I grew up, those kind of chances to learn about just what's around us was very difficult. So that's
Mm,
very important work you're doing.
mm.
Could you tell the Seeds fellows that are like just working on, just being an undergrad, how you actually came about this work that you're doing now, like your
Yeah.
pathway?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was probably like many seed students of going the academic route of like, I love research, I love science, let me get a PhD. And I think it's a beautiful path. And we need more scientists, we need more people of color in these pathways. So I definitely do not deter that. But there are also many others that need Black, Brown, minorities, underrepresented students to pursue in those avenues as well. So for me, I've always had a heart and a passion for people, and I didn't understand or didn't really gravitate towards being in my own silo or in my own world for too long without having to have a conversation with neighbors, with faith leaders, with students. And so I always wanted to have a career in a position where I constantly was seeing how practices and data and science and policy and how that really impacted the everyday person who never even heard of a scientist, right? Or never really understood why nature would be something that someone would care about in their neighborhood. So I was really driven by environmental justice and equity. So when we say that there's a natural space, who has access to that? Who are in those spaces? Who and what people have prevented people from enjoying those spaces? So that was another motivation for even the work that I do to make sure that all people, whether Black, Brown, polka dot, young or old, are able to experience not only science, but also just our outdoors. So that is really still the driving motivator. And I always try to find careers, whether I'm at National Wildlife Federation, whether I'm working in a wildlife ecology lab, whether I'm working in city government, finding those nexus for people to have access to the nature and to the outdoors and to the science that we all love. So I think if I can add, I mean, from a trajectory perspective, after graduation, I worked for the state government's Department of Environmental Quality as an intern. Did not like state government. I did not like cubicle life. That was not where my heartstrings were taking me. And there's times for passion. There's times for discipline and in learning skills. So I don't think that always following your heart is a good thing. Heart and can lead you to some weird places, but that was a season of learning. And then I ended up going to Baltimore, Maryland, where I worked for an environmental consulting firm called Biohabitats, and they did a lot of restoration wetland projects, given it's near the harbor in the Chesapeake Bay. And then from there, the boss from that environmental consulting firm said, hey, there's a job available at Parks and People Foundation, and there's a city government job that is actually going to be housed in this nonprofit that's going to help with revitalizing green spaces after demolition. So in West Baltimore, actually right after the Freddie Gray riots, which the racial riots happening in the city at that time, there was a huge initiative going on in the city around demolishing, abandoned houses. And with that means that there's now new green spaces that needs to be taken care of. And if you don't take care of them, they end up getting unkept, and there's maybe even perpetuated crime and other things that are not wanted there. So my job was to work alongside demolition folks and contractors to then find ways for the community to get involved with activating those green space, whether it's food gardens, whether they're pollinator gardens, whether it's just mowing, but just to have some kind of ownership over those spaces in their community. So from there, came back to Michigan, in Ann Arbor, Michigan, working for the University of Michigan Applied Wildlife Ecology Lab under Dr. Naima Harris, who was the first Black wildlife biologist hired at the R1 institution at University of Michigan in the EEB program. And I served as her first kind of participatory coordinator of translating the science that she was doing with wildlife ecology and large carnivore camera trap work in Michigan to people. And so finding some ways through virtual learning and community science to allow people to see why wildlife ecology is important and why coyotes, when they are in Detroit, make a difference, right? When we see, this is why, and this is how they're moving, this is what they're eating, et cetera. And from that job, my current boss from National Wildlife Federation heard about what I was doing in that lab and said, hey, there's a position opening up at National Wildlife Federation. Do you want it? And I'm like, well, my contract is ending here. Let me jump on board to an even larger organization that does more wildlife conservation for the last 83 years. So I'm now working at one of the largest green organizations in the world, I think, and serving in a capacity at a very local level, but still have the broad stroke of a conservation organization and the mobility of making sure all wildlife, all people are healthy and thriving. So that's where my wild trajectory has taken me, but it has been through academia to city government to Baltimore to Michigan to field work, heavy field work days to desk jobs. So it has been a journey.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing all that. You could definitely see the passion when you're speaking about all the different kinds of jobs that you do, but they're all related to the same goals. So definitely passion for what you do is very important in like finding the kind of job that you want to do and the kind of impact you want to make. So thank you so much for sharing.
Sure.
I guess lastly, we will want to just end on a interesting note. So let's
Sure.
try to if you had to choose one I guess like recommendation for our
Yeah.
students, like what they should do and how to just continue on their careers, what would be the best
Mm.
piece of advice you could give them?
Yeah. And I'll just set the framework of 2020 has been a challenging year, both mentally, both and emotionally, psychologically, and just even, yeah, socially in our country. And so we are facing many pandemics. I feel like in my mind, in a way of our social dynamics and how we are interacting with one another based on race and based on identity, in our health, as well as even just finding solace in not being lonely and the isolation feeling that we're feeling. So I think that lifting as you climb is one of the kind of foundational, I think, pillars I have for myself. And I also think that, so that's something that I really uplift and hope that that is something I can pass on. But also, loving yourself and really trusting your own, not only passion, but really what kind of impact you want to make in the world. And so whether that means through science, whether that means through adopting a puppy who just made an accident, I think she's a little nervous. So there is so many ways to make impact and not thinking that your avenue is not enough. Everyone is a part of the body, whether you're the nose, the arm, the lip, the eye. We're all working together and we have to make sure that we have the equity and the just society that we want. So really, trusting yourself in whatever way that you want to contribute to the world, but knowing that your contribution and your legacy is waiting on you to be your fullest self. And while that's happening, lifting as you climb. So as you're doing your good work, as you're doing your good trouble, right, there is another legacy and another community that is waiting for you.
Mentorship.
Yeah,
Exactly. Oh,
mentorship, guidance. So yeah.
thank you so much for giving us your time. It's been
Yeah.
great to meet you, and thank you. I mean, this was a great interview. If anybody has any questions for Tiffany, please feel free to reach out to her through her Twitter account,
Yes.
and yeah, we will
And
have her on
I
the
can send you
blog.
an email too.
Yeah.
I can send
And
you
then
an
I'll go ahead and I'll also add the email if you want to reach out to her and learn more about her amazing pathway and all the good work that she's doing. Well, thank
Awesome.
you, Tiffany.
Thank you,
Until
Valeria.
next time.
Sounds good.